The letter arrived at the ranch on a Tuesday morning in late September of 1883, carried by a dust-covered rider who looked like he had been traveling for 3 days straight. And when Quinn Jennings opened it with his work-roughened hands, he never imagined that a simple response to a mail-order bride advertisement would change everything about his solitary existence in the Colorado mountains near Breckenridge. Quinn stood on the porch of his sprawling ranch house, reading the careful script that spelled out a woman's desperate hope and honest circumstances. Most women seeking husbands through the advertisements painted themselves in flattering but vague terms, but Zelda Gardner had been brutally honest. She was a widow with 3 sons, ages 7, 9, and 11. Her husband had died 2 years prior in a mining accident back in Pennsylvania, and she had been struggling to keep her small family fed and housed ever since. The factory where she worked had recently closed, and she faced eviction within the month. She needed a husband, yes, but more than that. She needed someone willing to take on 3 growing boys who ate more than their share and asked endless questions about everything under the sun. Quinn folded the letter carefully and looked out across his land. At 32 years old, he had built his cattle ranch from nothing, working himself nearly to death for the past decade. The house he had constructed was large, built with the dream that someday it would be filled with the noise and chaos of family life. Instead, it echoed with his footsteps, and the only voices he heard were those of his ranch hands during the day. Most nights, he ate alone at a table meant for 8, and he slept in a bedroom meant for 2. He had placed the advertisement 6 months ago, but most of the responses had been from young women seeking adventure or fortune, women who seemed ill-suited for the harsh realities of ranch life in the Colorado mountains. Zelda's letter was different. She did not promise to be beautiful or entertaining. She promised to work hard, to be grateful, and to raise her sons to be men of character. She also promised honesty, loyalty, and a willingness to build a life together, whatever that might look like. Quinn went inside and sat at his desk, pulling out a sheet of paper. His hands, more accustomed to ropes and branding irons than pens, formed careful letters as he wrote his response. He told her about the ranch, about the work that would be required, about the isolation during the winter months when snow blocked the mountain passes. He told her about the town of Breckenridge, small but growing, with a decent school where her boys could get an education. And then, because he felt it needed to be said, he wrote the words that had been in his heart since reading her letter. "I always wanted a full house," he wrote. "A wife and children, noise at the dinner table, and toys scattered across the floor. I have built something good here, but it feels empty without people to share it with. If you are willing to come, I promise to treat you with respect and kindness, to provide for you and your sons, and to do my best to be a good husband and father. We can take our time getting to know each other, and I will not rush you into anything you are not ready for. But I hope, in time, we can build something real together." He posted the letter that same afternoon, and then the waiting began. October arrived with its golden aspens and crisp mornings, and Quinn found himself checking the mail with an eagerness that made his ranch hands smile knowingly. When the response finally came 3 weeks later, his heart pounded as he opened it. Zelda's second letter was longer than the first. She thanked him for his honesty and kindness, and she told him more about her sons. Thomas was 11, serious and responsible, already trying to be the man of the family. Benjamin was 9, curious and clever, always taking things apart to see how they worked. Samuel was 7, gentle and loving, with a tendency to collect stray animals and broken things. She told him about her late husband, Jacob, who had been a good man but whose dreams of striking it rich in the mines had led to his death. She told him she was not looking for wealth or excitement, only safety and stability for her boys. "I will not lie and say I am coming with grand romantic notions," she wrote. "My heart still aches for the man I lost, and I do not know if I can love again in that way. But I can promise partnership, loyalty, and respect. I can promise to make your house a home, to cook and clean and work beside you. I can promise that my boys will be taught to work hard and be respectful. If that is enough for you, then I accept your offer. We can take the train west and arrive in Breckenridge by the first week of November." Quinn read the letter 3 times, and each time he felt more certain that this was right. He did not need passionate declarations or promises of love. He needed exactly what she was offering: a partner and a family, a chance to build something together. He wrote back immediately, enclosing money for the train tickets and extra for traveling expenses. He told her he would meet her at the station in Breckenridge, and that he was already preparing the house for their arrival. He cleaned every room, ordered new beds for the boys, and stocked the pantry with enough food to last through the winter. He even bought toys and books, guessing at what boys those ages might enjoy. The first week of November arrived cold and clear, and Quinn dressed in his best clothes, borrowed a wagon from town because his working wagon was too rough for passengers, and drove to the train station with his heart in his throat. He arrived an hour early and spent the time pacing the platform, ignoring the amused looks from the station master. When the train finally pulled in with a great hiss of steam and screech of brakes, Quinn felt his mouth go dry. Passengers began to disembark, businessmen and miners and families, and then he saw her. Zelda Gardner stood on the train steps, a worn carpetbag in one hand, scanning the platform with anxious eyes. She was not classically beautiful, but there was something striking about her: the set of her shoulders, the determination in her face, the way she immediately turned to help her youngest son down the stairs. Quinn stepped forward, removing his hat. "Mrs. Gardner." She turned, and their eyes met for the first time. Hers were hazel, he noticed, with flecks of green and gold, and they were filled with equal parts hope and fear. "Mr. Jennings." "Yes, madam. Welcome to Breckenridge." He looked down at the 3 boys clustered around her, all of them thin and tired from the long journey, all of them watching him with wary eyes. "And you must be Thomas, Benjamin, and Samuel." The oldest boy, Thomas, stepped forward and extended his hand with grave formality. "Yes, sir." "Pleased to meet you." Quinn shook his hand, noting the firm grip and direct gaze. "The pleasure is mine. Are you all hungry? We have a bit of a drive to the ranch, but I brought food for the journey." The middle boy, Benjamin, perked up at this. "How far is your ranch, sir?" "About 10 miles into the mountains. We should arrive before dark if we leave soon." The youngest, Samuel, was holding his mother's hand and peering at Quinn from behind her skirts. Quinn crouched down to his level. "I hear you like animals, Samuel." "We have horses, cattle, a few barn cats, and a dog named Rufus who is very friendly." Samuel's eyes widened. "A dog? The friendliest dog you will ever meet. He is probably waiting by the gate right now, wondering where I have been all afternoon." That earned him a small smile, and Quinn felt something warm expand in his chest. He gathered their bags, which were pitifully few, and led them to the wagon. He had lined the bed with blankets and pillows, making it as comfortable as possible, and he handed up the basket of food he had packed: bread and cheese and apples and cookies. As they left Breckenridge behind and headed into the mountains, Quinn pointed out landmarks and told them about the area. Zelda sat beside him on the bench seat, her hands folded in her lap, and he was acutely aware of her presence: the faint scent of lavender that clung to her despite the long journey, the way she watched everything with those observant eyes. "It is beautiful here," she said quietly, taking in the pine-covered slopes and distant peaks dusted with snow. "It is. Harsh in the winter, but beautiful all the same." He glanced at her. "The house is large. I built it with a family in mind, so there is plenty of room. The boys can each have their own room, or they can share if they prefer, whatever makes them comfortable." "That is generous." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Your letters made you seem like a kind man, Mr. Jennings. I am glad to see that you are. Please call me Quinn. And I hope in time you will be glad you came." "I am already glad. Whatever else happens, my sons will have food and shelter and safety. That is more than I could give them in Pennsylvania." They arrived at the ranch just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rufus, a large golden dog of indeterminate breed, came bounding up to the wagon, barking with joy. Samuel squealed with delight, and even Thomas and Benjamin could not hide their excitement. Quinn helped Zelda down from the wagon, his hands at her waist, and felt her stiffen slightly at the contact. He released her immediately and stepped back. "Welcome home," he said, gesturing to the house. It was indeed large, built of solid logs with a wide porch and large windows that glowed with lamplight. Quinn had left lamps burning in every room, wanting it to look welcoming. He led them inside, carrying their bags, and watched as they took in the main room with its large fireplace, comfortable furniture, and dining table. "Oh my," Zelda breathed, one hand going to her throat. "Quinn, this is wonderful. Let me show you the bedrooms." He led them down the hallway, showing the boys their rooms first. Each had a bed with a thick quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and yes, some toys and books on the shelves. The boys exchanged glances as if unable to believe their good fortune. Then he showed Zelda to the room he had prepared for her. It was the second largest bedroom, across the hall from his own, with a large bed, a beautiful quilt he had bought in town, and a rocking chair by the window. "This is yours," he said. "Your space. I will not intrude on it." She turned to him, and he saw tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this, for your kindness. I did not dare hope for so much. You are my wife now, or you will be tomorrow when we go to the preacher. You and the boys deserve to be comfortable and happy here." He cleared his throat, suddenly awkward. "I will let you all settle in. I imagine you are tired from the journey. I will make dinner." "You cook?" Benjamin asked, appearing in the doorway. Quinn smiled. "I have been living alone for a long time. It was either learn to cook or starve. I am no fancy chef, but I can make a decent stew and biscuits." "I can help," Zelda said quickly. "I should help. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we will figure out how to share the work." He headed to the kitchen, and to his surprise, all three boys followed him, curious and hungry. He set them to simple tasks, peeling potatoes and setting the table, and found himself enjoying their chatter and questions. Zelda appeared in the doorway after a while, having changed from her traveling dress into something simpler. She watched him cooking with her sons, and something in her expression softened. "You are good with them. I like them. They are good boys." He meant it. Despite their circumstances and the uncertainty they must be feeling, all three were polite and helpful. Thomas especially seemed determined to make a good impression, working diligently at whatever task Quinn gave him. They ate dinner together at the big table, and Quinn felt that hollow emptiness in his chest begin to fill. This was what he had wanted, exactly this: the sound of voices and laughter, the comfortable chaos of a family meal. When Samuel asked for seconds, and Benjamin talked enthusiastically about the train ride, and Thomas quietly thanked him for the meal, Quinn felt more content than he had in years. After dinner, Zelda insisted on cleaning up despite Quinn's protests, and the boys helped. Quinn sat by the fire, Rufus at his feet, and listened to them work together in the kitchen. When they were done, the boys came to sit by the fire, exhausted but too excited to sleep immediately. "Tell us about the ranch," Benjamin said. "How many cattle do you have?" Quinn spent the next hour telling them about the ranch operations, about the cattle and horses, about his ranch hands who would arrive in the morning, about the work that needed to be done before winter set in fully. The boys listened with rapt attention, and even Samuel, who was fighting sleep, asked questions about Rufus and the barn cats. Finally, Zelda stood. "Bed, boys. We have all had a long day." There were groans but no real protests, and the boys filed off to their rooms. Quinn heard Zelda moving from room to room, tucking them in, and his heart clenched at the domesticity of it. When she returned to the main room, she looked exhausted. "Sit," Quinn said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Rest for a moment." She sank into the chair with a sigh. "They like you," she said simply. "I was worried about that, but they like you. I like them too. You have raised them well, Zelda. They are good boys. I have tried. It has not been easy these past 2 years." She looked into the fire, her face shadowed. "Jacob was a dreamer, always chasing the next big opportunity. The mines were supposed to make us rich. Instead, they made me a widow and my boys fatherless. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She looked at him then. "I need you to understand something, Quinn. I cared for my husband, and his death hurt me deeply. But I am not coming to you as some heartbroken woman looking to replace him. I am coming as a practical woman who needs to provide for her children. I can be a good wife to you, a good partner, but I cannot promise love. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Quinn nodded slowly. "I understand, and I do not expect it. We are both coming to this arrangement for practical reasons, but I hope we can be friends at least. I hope we can build something good together, even if it is not a grand romance. I think I can manage friendship." She smiled then, a small, tired smile that transformed her face. "And who knows, maybe that is enough. Maybe that is better than grand romance anyway. Those tend to burn bright and fast, while friendship can last a lifetime." "Exactly," she stood. "I should go to bed. Tomorrow is another big day. The preacher is expecting us at noon, just a simple ceremony, nothing fancy. My ranch hands will stand as witnesses. That is fine, I do not need fancy." She paused at the hallway entrance. "Thank you again, Quinn, for all of this, for giving us a chance. Thank you for coming. For trusting me enough to travel all this way." She disappeared down the hallway, and Quinn sat by the fire for a long time after, thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. Yesterday, he had been a lonely bachelor. Today, he had a family. Tomorrow, he would have a wife. It was not a conventional love story, but maybe, just maybe, it would be a good story nonetheless. The next morning dawned clear and cold, and Quinn woke early as was his habit. He started coffee and breakfast and was surprised when Thomas appeared in the kitchen, already dressed. "Morning, sir." "Can I help?" Quinn handed him a bowl and eggs. "You can beat these for scrambling. And Thomas, you do not have to call me sir. Quinn is fine." The boy nodded seriously and set to work. "My mother said we are getting married today. Does that mean you will be our father now?" It was a fair question, asked with such direct honesty that Quinn had to respect it. "I suppose that depends on what you boys want. I will never try to replace your father, but I would be honored if you would let me be a father figure to you. If you would rather I just be Quinn, that is fine too." Thomas considered this while beating the eggs with more force than strictly necessary. "I think having a father figure would be good. Samuel barely remembers our pa, and Benjamin and I, we remember him, but it has been hard without someone to teach us things. Man things." "Then I will do my best to teach you man things." Quinn smiled. And you can teach me boy things. It has been a long time since I was 11, and I have forgotten some of it." That earned him a grin from Thomas, and they finished making breakfast together. The other boys tumbled out of their rooms soon after, and then Zelda appeared, looking nervous in a simple but clean dress. "You look lovely," Quinn said, and meant it. She was not fancy, but there was something appealing about her, her strength, her honesty, the way she looked at her sons with such fierce love. She blushed slightly. "Thank you." They ate breakfast together, and then Quinn sent the boys to explore the ranch under the watchful eye of his foreman, Jack, who had arrived with the other ranch hands. Jack was a grizzled man in his 50s who had worked with Quinn since the beginning, and Quinn trusted him implicitly. "Watch them close," Quinn told him. "They are not used to ranch life yet." "I will treat them like they are made of gold," Jack promised, and Quinn believed him. Then Quinn and Zelda rode into town in the wagon, sitting side by side in silence for much of the journey. Finally, Zelda spoke. "Are you nervous?" "A bit," Quinn admitted. "Are you terrified?" She laughed, but it was shaky. "I have done this before, but it was different then. I knew Jacob for 2 years before we married. You and I are strangers. Then let us use the ride to become less strange to each other." "Ask me anything you want to know." She thought for a moment. "Why did you never marry before? A man like you with all this land and a good home, you must have had opportunities." "I was too busy building the ranch at first, and then I suppose I became set in my ways. The women in town, they wanted a man with polish and charm, someone who could dance and make pretty speeches. I am just a rancher, rough around the edges. I can work from sunup to sundown, but I am no good at courtship games." "I like that about you," Zelda said quietly. "You are honest and direct. After Jacob's dreaming and scheming, it is refreshing. What about you? What do you want from this marriage beyond security for your boys?" She considered the question seriously. "I want peace. I want to sleep at night without worrying about how I will feed my children. I want to see them grow up healthy and strong. I want to build something that will last, something stable." She glanced at him. "Is that too practical, too unromantic?" "It is perfect," Quinn said, "because that is exactly what I want too." The ceremony was simple, held in the small church with the preacher's wife and Jack and another ranch hand as witnesses. Quinn wore his best suit, which was still worn at the elbows, and Zelda wore her dress with her hair pinned up neatly. They exchanged vows in steady voices, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her cheek gently, not wanting to presume more. But as they signed the register and accepted congratulations, Quinn felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was his wife now, and those 3 boys were his sons. It was a responsibility he took seriously, and he vowed silently to do right by all of them. They stopped at the general store on the way home, and Quinn told Zelda to buy whatever she needed for the house and herself. She was hesitant at first, clearly unused to having money to spend, but gradually she began to select items, practical things mostly, but also a few treats for the boys and some fabric she clearly wanted. "Get it," Quinn urged. "Get whatever you want. You are being too generous. You are my wife. Everything I have is yours now. Please do not be afraid to use it." She looked at him with something like wonder. "You really mean that, every word?" Back at the ranch, the boys had clearly been having the time of their lives. They were dirty and exhausted and full of stories about the cattle and horses and everything they had seen. Quinn listened to it all, pleased to see them so animated and happy. That evening they had another family dinner, and afterward, Quinn suggested they establish some routines. "School starts at 8, he said. "Breckenridge has a good schoolhouse, and I will drive you boys in every morning and pick you up every afternoon. You will have chores before and after school, but nothing too hard. I want you to have time to be boys too, to play and explore." What kind of chores? Benjamin asked, clearly interested. Feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, helping in the barn. As you get older and stronger, you will learn more. Thomas, if you are interested, I can start teaching you ranch work in earnest. It is hard work, but it is good work. Thomas nodded eagerly. I want to learn everything. Then you shall. Quinn looked at Zelda. And you, what do you want your days to look like? She seemed surprised to be asked. I will keep the house, cook, clean, tend the garden, the usual things. I have a woman from town who comes once a week to do heavy cleaning. I will keep her on so you are not overwhelmed. And we have a large garden plot, but it is late in the season now. Come spring, you can plant whatever you like. You do not have to make things so easy for me. Yes, I do. You are not a servant, Zelda. You are my wife and partner. I want you to have time to breathe, to enjoy life a little. She blinked rapidly, and he realized she was fighting tears. I am not used to being treated so kindly. Then you had better get used to it. The first weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and new routines. The boys started school and came home each day with stories and lessons to share. They took to their chores with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Samuel needed constant reminding while Thomas attacked every task with determination, but all three were trying their best. Quinn spent his days working the ranch, but he made sure to be present for breakfast and dinner, to help with homework in the evenings, to answer the endless questions the boys seemed to have about everything. And slowly, carefully, he and Zelda began to build a friendship. They talked while doing dishes, while sitting by the fire in the evenings, while riding into town for supplies. She told him about her childhood in Pennsylvania, about her parents who had died when she was young, about her marriage to Jacob, and the slow realization that his dreams would never come true. He told her about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about coming west to make his fortune, about the years of back-breaking work that had built this ranch from nothing. You did all this alone? She asked one evening, looking around the comfortable house. Not entirely alone. Jack has been with me for 8 years, and some of the other hands have been here almost as long. But yes, mostly alone. He looked at her. It is better now with all of you here. The house feels alive. The boys are happy. I have not seen Samuel laugh so much in years. And Thomas, he worships you. He talks about you constantly, about the things you have taught him. He is a good student, they all are. Quinn hesitated, then added, and you? Are you happy? Zelda smiled. I am content. That is more than I expected and more than enough. But Quinn found himself wanting more than her contentment. Somewhere in those first weeks, his feelings had begun to shift. He found himself watching her as she moved around the house, noting the graceful way she worked, the soft sound of her humming, the tender way she cared for her sons. He found himself looking forward to their evening conversations, to the sound of her laugh, to the rare moments when she would touch his arm in passing. He realized with some surprise, falling in love with his wife. The realization came fully one evening in late November. The first real snow had fallen, blanketing the ranch in white, and the boys were outside building a snowman while Zelda and Quinn watched from the porch. She was laughing at Benjamin's antics, her face alight with joy, and Quinn felt his heart constrict with the force of his feelings. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, glancing at him. "I was thinking how lucky I am," he said honestly. "How this is everything I wanted but never thought I would have." She looked at him searchingly. "You are an unusual man, Quinn Jennings. Most men would resent taking on another man's children." "I do not see them as another man's children. I see them as my sons." He meant it absolutely. In the month since they had arrived, the boys had worked their way completely into his heart. Zelda's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "You mean that?" "Every word. They are mine now, just as you are mine." And I am yours, all of you. That is what family means." She turned back to watch the boys, but not before Quinn saw a tear slip down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. December brought colder weather and shorter days, and the family settled into a comfortable rhythm. Quinn taught Thomas and Benjamin to ride properly, and even Samuel was learning on an old gentle mare. They went into town for supplies and to attend church on Sundays, and Quinn noticed the way people looked at them, with approval and perhaps a touch of envy. He had gone from a solitary bachelor to the head of a thriving family, and it showed in everything about him. Christmas was approaching, and Quinn wanted to make it special. He secretly bought gifts for everyone, consulting with Zelda about what the boys might want. She helped him plan a special meal and decorations, and he saw her relaxing more, letting her guard down, even laughing freely sometimes. One evening in mid-December, they were sitting by the fire after the boys had gone to bed. Snow was falling outside and the house was warm and cozy. Zelda was mending one of Samuel's shirts, and Quinn was supposedly reading but mostly watching her. "You are staring," she said without looking up, but there was a smile in her voice. "Sorry, I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how different things are now, how much better." He set his book aside. "Zelda, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy here, truly happy?" She set down her mending and looked at him. "Yes, I am happy. More than that, I am grateful. You have given us so much, Quinn, more than I ever dreamed of." "It is not just gratitude I want from you." The words came out before he could stop them, and he saw her eyes widen. "What do you mean?" Quinn took a breath, knowing he was about to risk the comfortable friendship they had built. "I mean that I have feelings for you, Zelda. Real feelings. I know we agreed this would be a practical arrangement, and I do not expect you to feel the same way, but I needed you to know. I am in love with you." She stared at him, her expression unreadable. "Quinn, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I just needed to be honest." He stood, suddenly needing space. "I should check on the stock before bed." "Wait." She stood too, crossing to him. "Do not run away, that is not fair. I am not running, I need a moment." "So do I, but we should take it together." She reached out and took his hand, and the touch sent electricity through him. "I have feelings for you too, Quinn. I did not want to. I told myself it was too soon, that I was being foolish, that practical arrangements should not involve hearts, but it happened anyway." Quinn felt his heart begin to pound. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that somewhere between your kindness to my sons and your patience with me and the way you make me laugh, I fell in love with you too." She smiled up at him, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I love you, Quinn Jennings. I do not know when it happened exactly, but it is true." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, feeling her warmth against him. "I was so afraid you would never feel this way, that I would spend my whole life loving a woman who only saw me as a provider." "I see you," she whispered. "I see the man you are, kind and strong and generous. I see the way you love my boys, our boys. I see the way you look at me like I am something precious. How could I not love you?" He tilted her face up and kissed her, really kissed her for the first time. It was soft and sweet and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Well," Zelda said, her cheeks flushed. "That was worth waiting for." Quinn laughed, giddy with relief and joy. "Should we tell the boys about us being in love? I think they already suspect." "Samuel asked me last week if you were going to be my real husband now, not just a pretend one. He is only 7 but surprisingly perceptive." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were very real." She took his hand and led him back to the fire. "Come, sit with me. We should talk about what this means, where we go from here." They sat close together on the sofa, her hand in his, and talked late into the night. They talked about their hopes and dreams, about the life they wanted to build together, about more children perhaps, if she wanted. She admitted she did want more children, that she had always hoped for a large family, and Quinn told her he would love as many children as they were blessed with. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to court you properly, even though we are already married. I want to take you to dances in town, buy you flowers, write you terrible poetry." "Please, no poetry," she said, laughing, "but the rest sounds lovely. And when you are ready, I want you to move into my room, our room. I want to wake up next to you every morning." She blushed but nodded. "Soon." "Not tonight, but soon. I need a little time to adjust to this, to us being more than just practical partners." "Take all the time you need. I have waited this long. I can wait a little longer." But it was not much longer. 2 nights later, Quinn came back from checking on the stock to find that Zelda had moved her things into his bedroom. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, nervous but determined, and when he entered, she stood. "I am ready," she said simply. "If you are." "I have been ready since the day you stepped off that train," Quinn said, crossing to her. "But are you sure? I do not want to rush you. I am sure. I love you, Quinn, and I want to be your wife in every way." He kissed her gently, and then more passionately, and as they came together that night, it felt like the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. They were not just partners or friends anymore. They were husband and wife in love and building a life together. Christmas that year was magical. Quinn had managed to buy gifts for everyone, practical things mostly, but with a few special surprises. The boys received books and warm clothes, new boots and toys. Zelda received a beautiful shawl and a locket with spaces for pictures of all her sons. And Quinn received a hand-knitted sweater from Zelda, and a pocket watch the boys had pooled their small savings to buy. But the best gift of all was the one Zelda gave him in private on Christmas night. They were in their bedroom, the house quiet with the boys asleep, and she took his hands. "I have one more gift for you," she said, her eyes sparkling with a secret. "What is it?" "I am with child. Our child, yours and mine." Quinn felt the world tilt. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I have missed my monthly courses and I know the signs. By summer, God willing, you will have another son or daughter." He pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with emotion. "A baby, we are having a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it." He kissed her soundly. "Thank you, Zelda, for everything. For trusting me, for loving me, for giving me this incredible family. Thank you for being the man you are, for taking us in and loving us so completely." She rested her head on his chest. "I never thought I could be this happy again. After Jacob died, I thought the best parts of my life were over. But this, with you, it is better than I ever imagined." The winter passed in a cocoon of warmth and love. The ranch work slowed with the snow, giving Quinn more time with his family. He taught the boys to ice skate on the frozen pond, to track animals in the snow, to survive in the harsh mountain winter. He held Zelda close on cold nights, talking about the future and making plans for the baby. Spring arrived in a rush of melting snow and budding trees, and with it came new energy. Zelda, now visibly pregnant, worked on planting a massive garden with the boys' help. Quinn started breaking a new horse and planning for the summer cattle drive. Life was busy and full and wonderful. In late May, Thomas had his 12th birthday, and they celebrated with a party that included the ranch hands and some families from town. Watching Thomas surrounded by friends, laughing and happy, Quinn felt a profound sense of accomplishment. A year ago, this boy had been thin and worried, trying to be the man of his family at 11 years old. Now he was healthy and strong, able to be a boy again. "You have done well by them," Jack said, appearing at Quinn's elbow. "By all of them." "They have done well by me," Quinn corrected. "I was half a man before they came, just going through the motions. Now I am really living." June brought intense heat and the cattle drive. Quinn had to be gone for 2 weeks, and he worried about leaving Zelda, who was now 6 months pregnant. But she assured him she would be fine, that the boys and Jack would look after her, and he needed to trust her strength. The drive was successful, and Quinn returned to find the ranch running smoothly, and Zelda glowing with health despite her bulk. She had missed him, she said, and he had missed her too, more than he thought possible. They had only been together since November, but she had become as essential to him as breathing. 2 weeks felt like forever, he told her, holding her carefully. I hated every moment I was away from you. Then it is a good thing the baby will come before the fall drive. I do not want you missing that. July brought the first signs that the baby would arrive soon, and Quinn was a nervous wreck. He had helped with calving and foaling countless times, but human birth terrified him. Zelda, by contrast, was calm and practical, having done this 3 times before. It will be fine, she assured him. Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. That does not make me any less worried. When her labor started on a hot afternoon in late July, Quinn sent Thomas racing to town for the doctor and the midwife. He stayed with Zelda, holding her hand through the contractions, feeling completely useless but unwilling to leave her side. You should go, she panted between pains. This is not for you to see. I am not going anywhere. You are my wife and this is my child. I stay. The boys were corralled in the kitchen with Jack, who was keeping them occupied and calm. The midwife arrived and shooed Quinn out, but Zelda called him back. I want him here, she said firmly. He stays. So Quinn stayed, holding her hand, wiping her face with a cool cloth, whispering encouragement and love. And when, after hours of labor, a baby's cry filled the air, he felt tears streaming down his face. A son, the midwife announced. A healthy baby boy. Zelda was exhausted but radiant as she held their son. Quinn looked down at the tiny red face and felt his heart expand impossibly. He is perfect. You are perfect. What should we name him? Zelda asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Quinn knew. Jacob, he said, after your first husband, so the boys know we honor their father's memory. Zelda's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? I thought you might want to name him after your father. We can do that with the next one, Quinn said. This boy should be Jacob, so your sons see that I respect where they came from. They called the boys in to meet their new brother, and the joy on their faces was something Quinn would remember forever. Even Thomas, trying hard to be grown up, could not hide his delight. Samuel was fascinated by the tiny baby, wanting to touch his little hands and face. Can I hold him? Benjamin asked, and Zelda carefully placed the baby in his arms, showing him how to support the head. Benjamin stared down at his new brother with wonder. He is so small. You were all this small once, Zelda said. He is our real brother, Samuel said, looking at Quinn. Half-brother anyway. No halves about it, Quinn said firmly. You are all brothers, all my sons. Blood does not matter. Love does. Baby Jacob was an easy baby, sleeping well and eating well, and Zelda recovered quickly from the birth. By August, she was back to her normal activities, though Quinn tried to get her to rest more. Life settled into a new rhythm that included the baby, and Quinn marveled at how natural it all felt. One evening in September, a year after that first letter had arrived, Quinn and Zelda sat on the porch swing while the boys played in the yard. Baby Jacob was asleep in Zelda's arms, and the setting sun painted everything gold. You remember what I wrote in my first letter? Quinn asked. About wanting a full house, I remember. You said you had always wanted a wife and children, noise at the dinner table and toys scattered across the floor. Well, I have all that now and more. The table is noisy, the floor is constantly covered in toys and boots and books, and the house is full of love." He put his arm around her. "Thank you for answering my advertisement, for taking a chance on a lonely rancher. Thank you for wanting a widow with 3 sons, for seeing past the complications to the possibilities." She leaned into him. "I thought my life was over when Jacob died, but it was not over. It was just beginning a new chapter, one I never saw coming. The best chapter of both our lives." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their boys play. Thomas was teaching Benjamin how to throw a rope, while Samuel was collecting interesting rocks as usual. Rufus barked and chased after them, and in the distance, cattle lowed in the fields. It was ordinary and perfect, everything Quinn had ever wanted. The years that followed brought more changes and more blessings. The ranch continued to prosper, and Quinn expanded the operation, buying more land and cattle. Thomas grew into a young man, working side by side with Quinn and showing real skill as a rancher. Benjamin discovered a talent for working with horses and began training them for sale. Samuel, true to his gentle nature, decided he wanted to be a veterinarian and buried himself in books about animal care. Zelda and Quinn had 2 more children, a daughter they named Grace in 1885 and another son named Matthew in 1887. The house was indeed full, sometimes chaotically so, but neither of them would have wanted it any other way. In 1890, when Thomas was 19, he announced his intention to marry a girl from town, a sweet-natured young woman named Emma. Quinn and Zelda helped him build a small house on the ranch property, and the wedding was held at the ranch with half the town in attendance. Watching his oldest son marry, seeing the man he had become, Quinn felt a profound sense of pride and gratitude. "That is your son," Zelda whispered during the ceremony, squeezing his hand. "That is our son," Quinn corrected. "We raised him together." Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the younger children were in bed, Quinn and Zelda sat on their porch swing, a place they had spent countless evenings over the years. "You ever think about that first day?" Zelda asked. "When I stepped off the train with 3 frightened boys and no idea what to expect all the time, I think about how nervous I was, how afraid you would take one look at me and get back on the train." "I almost did," she admitted. "I was terrified. But then you crouched down to talk to Samuel about Rufus, and I saw the kindness in you. I knew then that we would be all right." Quinn pulled her close. "We have been more than all right. We have been extraordinary. We have not we?" She smiled up at him. "Who would have thought that a practical arrangement between strangers would turn into such a great love story?" "I would have," Quinn said. "From the moment I read your first letter, something in me knew. I think I started falling in love with you before we even met, with your honesty and your strength and your fierce love for your sons. And I fell in love with you when you said you always wanted a full house. I knew then that you would not just tolerate my boys, you would embrace them. And you have, beyond my wildest dreams." They sat together in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Inside the house, their children slept safely. Around them, the land they had built a life on stretched into the darkness. And beside him, Quinn had the woman he loved, still as beautiful to him as she had been that first day, maybe more so now, with the years of love and laughter and life etched on her face. "I love you, Zelda Jennings," he said, using the name that still gave him a thrill of pride. "More today than yesterday, and less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too, Quinn. Thank you for being the man I needed, the father my sons needed, the partner I did not even know I was looking for. Thank you for answering that advertisement. Thank you for taking a chance on me." She laughed softly. "Best decision I ever made." As the years continued to unfold, the family grew and changed. Benjamin married in 1892, and Samuel left for college in 1893 to pursue his dreams of veterinary medicine. Young Jacob grew into a bright, energetic boy who seemed to have inherited the best qualities of both his parents. Grace was a whirlwind of activity and opinions, keeping everyone on their toes. And Matthew, the baby of the family, was spoiled by everyone but somehow remained sweet-natured. Quinn watched his children grow and his grandchildren arrive. Thomas and Emma had 3 children in quick succession, and he marveled at how his life had turned out. He had built a legacy, not just in land and cattle, but in family and love. The ranch would continue long after he was gone, passed down through generations who would remember the lonely cowboy who had placed an advertisement and the brave widow who had answered it. In 1895, on a warm September evening, Quinn and Zelda celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a party, and as Quinn looked around at all the people there, all connected to him and Zelda by blood or by love, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Quite a full house," Zelda murmured, appearing at his elbow with a glass of lemonade. "The fullest," Quinn agreed, pulling her close. "Everything I ever wanted and more. Any regrets?" "Not a single one." "You," she looked up at him, her hazel eyes still bright and beautiful. "How could I regret the best decision I ever made? You gave me a home, a partner, a love I never expected to find again. You gave my sons a father and a future. You gave me more children and a life I never dreamed possible. No, Quinn Jennings, I have absolutely no regrets." He kissed her there in front of everyone, and their children laughed and cheered. They had become that couple, the ones who still held hands, who still looked at each other with love, who still kissed in public like newlyweds. And Quinn would not have had it any other way. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, they walked out to the pasture together as they often did, looking at the stars and the mountains silhouetted against the sky. Rufus had long since passed, as had several other dogs, but there was always a dog or two following them, and tonight it was a young collie named Scout. "You remember what you wrote in your second letter to me?" Quinn asked. "Before you came, I wrote several things." "Which part?" "You said you could not promise love, only partnership and loyalty and respect. You said you did not know if you could love again." "I remember. I was trying to be honest to manage expectations." She smiled. "I was wrong, of course. I could love again. I did love again. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone." "I know," Quinn said, "because I feel the same way. This love, what we have built together, it is deeper and richer than anything I imagined love could be. It is not just romance or passion, though we have had that. It is partnership and friendship and respect and history. It is everything." "It is everything," Zelda agreed. "We took a practical arrangement and turned it into magic." They stood there under the stars, holding each other, and Quinn thought about all the years behind them and the years still to come. They had built something beautiful and lasting, something that would continue long after they were gone. Their children would tell their children about the cowboy who wanted a full house, and the widow who was brave enough to give him one. They would tell about how love can be found in unexpected places, how families can be built through choice as much as blood, how the best stories are the ones that start with honest letters and end with a lifetime of happiness. "Come on," Zelda said, tugging his hand. "Let us go home. Home." That word had never sounded so sweet. They walked back to the house together, the home they had built and filled with love and laughter, the house that had started empty and was now overflowing with memories and life. The lights were on in the windows, warm and welcoming, and as they climbed the porch steps together, Quinn felt that familiar surge of contentment and joy. This was his life, this woman beside him, This house full of love, these children and grandchildren who bore his name and his values. This was what he had dreamed of during all those lonely years, and it had come true in ways he never could have imagined. "Thank you," he said to Zelda as they entered the house. "For what? For everything. For saying yes. For getting on that train. For trusting me with your sons. For loving me. For building this life with me." She smiled and cupped his face in her hands. "No, thank you. For seeing past the complications to the woman and boys who needed you. For being patient and kind. For loving us so completely. For being exactly the man you are." They kissed in the doorway, just as they had done countless times over the years, and as always, Quinn felt like the luckiest man alive. The final years of their story unfolded with the gentle grace of a life well lived. They grew older together, their hair turning gray, their steps slowing, but their love never diminishing. They became the patriarch and matriarch of a large, sprawling family that included children, grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch prospered under Thomas's management, while Benjamin's horse training business became renowned throughout Colorado, and Samuel returned from college to establish the first veterinary practice in Breckenridge. Jacob, their first child together, grew into a young man with his mother's determination and his father's steady kindness. He chose to stay on the ranch, working alongside Thomas and eventually taking over much of the day-to-day management. Grace surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, drawn to education by her love of books and her natural way with children. Matthew, the youngest, inherited his father's love of the land and became a surveyor, helping to map the growing territories around Breckenridge. In 1905, on their 20th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a massive celebration. 3 generations filled the ranch house and spilled out into the yard. Quinn, now 54 and graying at the temples, stood with Zelda, who was 46 and still beautiful in his eyes, and looked at everything they had created. 20 years, Zelda said, shaking her head in wonder. "It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "The best 20 years of my life," Quinn said. "Mine too." She leaned into him. "We did good, did not we? We did better than good. We did extraordinary." That night, after the party had wound down and most of the family had departed for their own homes, the original 4, Quinn, Zelda, and Thomas, Benjamin and Samuel, sat together on the porch. The boys, now men in their 20s and 30s, talked about their memories of arriving at the ranch, of their first impressions of Quinn, of the life they had built together. "I remember being so scared," Samuel admitted. "I was only 7, and I did not understand why we were going so far away to live with a stranger." "I remember thinking you were huge," Benjamin said, grinning at Quinn. "This big cowboy who looked like he could snap us in half. But then you crouched down to talk to Samuel about Rufus, and I thought maybe you were not so scary after all." "I knew right away you were a good man," Thomas said quietly. "I saw the way you looked at Ma with respect and kindness. And I saw the house you had prepared for us, the toys and books you had bought. I knew then that we were going to be all right." Quinn felt his throat tighten. "You boys, you 3, you changed my life. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions. But you taught me what it meant to be a father, to love without reservation, to put someone else's needs before my own. You made me a better man." "You made us better men," Thomas countered. "You taught us how to work, how to think, how to treat people. You showed us what a good man looks like. Everything I am, everything we all are, we owe to you and Ma." Zelda was crying quietly, and Quinn pulled her close. "We all saved each other," she said. "That is what family does." They sat together in the darkness, the 4 who had started this journey and the woman who had made it possible, and they remembered and celebrated and loved each other. It was a perfect moment, one that would be treasured in memory for the rest of their lives. As the years continued, Quinn and Zelda grew old together with grace and gratitude. They took daily walks around the ranch, moving slower but still hand in hand. They spent evenings on the porch swing, watching sunsets and talking about everything and nothing. They were surrounded by family, supported by love, and content in a way that only comes from a life fully lived. In 1910, when Quinn turned 60 and Zelda 51, they decided to take a trip back to Pennsylvania so Zelda could see the places of her youth one more time. It was a sentimental journey, visiting her parents' graves and the town where she had lived with Jacob. Standing at Jacob Gardner's grave, Quinn felt no jealousy or resentment, only gratitude that this man had lived and loved Zelda and given her 3 sons who had become Quinn's sons too. "Thank you," Quinn said quietly to the gravestone. "Thank you for loving her first, for giving her those boys. They have been the greatest blessing of my life." Zelda wept and held his hand, and they stood there together, honoring the past while grateful for the present. The trip renewed Zelda in some way, gave her closure and peace. On the train ride back to Colorado, she told Quinn stories about her first marriage, things she had never shared before, and Quinn listened with love and understanding. There was room in his heart for all of it, for her past and their present, for the man she had loved before and the man she loved now. "Jacob would have liked you," she said as the mountains came into view, signaling their approach to home. "He would have been grateful that you loved his sons, that you gave them the life he wanted to give them but could not." "I hope I have done right by his memory," Quinn said. "You have done more than right. You have honored it in every way possible." They returned to the ranch to a joyous homecoming, surrounded by children and grandchildren who had missed them. The house was noisy and chaotic and perfect, just the way Quinn had always dreamed it would be. In the years that followed, Quinn and Zelda settled into the rhythm of elders, still active but no longer running the ranch, still engaged but content to let the younger generation take the lead. They became the storytellers of the family, sharing tales of the old days, of how they met, of the early years when the ranch was smaller and the family was just beginning. Their story became legend within the family, the tale of the lonely cowboy and the brave widow, of the advertisement and the honest letters, of the practical arrangement that became a great love. Grandchildren would climb into their laps and beg for the story again, and Quinn and Zelda would oblige, each adding details the other forgot, laughing at old memories and still holding hands like newlyweds. "Tell us about the first time you saw Grandma," young Jacob's daughter would beg. "She stepped off that train," Quinn would begin, "and I thought she was the most beautiful, frightened, determined woman I had ever seen. She had 3 boys clustered around her, all of them thin and scared, and she was trying so hard to be brave for them. And when I saw Grandpa," Zelda would continue, "I thought he was impossibly tall and serious, and I was terrified he would take one look at us and send us back. But then he crouched down to talk to your Uncle Samuel about a dog, and I saw his kindness, and I knew we would be all right." "And then you fell in love?" the children would ask, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear it again. "Then we fell in love," Quinn and Zelda would say together, smiling at each other with the same warmth they had shared for decades. In 1918, as the world was recovering from the Great War that had touched even their remote corner of Colorado, Quinn and Zelda celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary. Quinn was 67 now, his hair completely white, his hands gnarled from decades of ranch work. Zelda was 59, her face lined but still beautiful, her hazel eyes still bright with intelligence and love. They stood on the porch of the house Quinn had built so long ago, looking out at the land that sprawled before them, now managed by their sons and grandsons, and they reflected on the life they had built. 33 years, Quinn marveled. Where did the time go? Into every wonderful moment, Zelda said. Into every sunrise we watched together, every child we raised, every meal we shared, every crisis we weathered. The time went into living, really living. I would not change a single moment of it. Neither would I. Well, maybe a few moments, she teased. Like that time you decided to bring that orphan bear cub home and it ate all my preserves. Quinn laughed, the sound still strong despite his age. That was Benjamin's idea, not mine. You agreed to it. I could never say no to those boys. You know that. I do know that. It is one of the things I have always loved most about you. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture as natural as breathing. You have been the best father, Quinn, to all our children, but especially to those first 3 boys. You gave them everything. They gave me everything, Quinn corrected. They gave me purpose and love and a reason to be better than I was. They made me a father when I thought I would never have that chance. They stood in comfortable silence, and Quinn thought about all the moments that had brought them to this place. The advertisement he had placed, hoping for companionship. The letter from a widow with 3 sons, honest and desperate. The decision to take a chance on each other. The wedding, simple and practical. The slow building of friendship and trust. The moment he had realized he loved her. The night she had said she loved him too. The birth of their first child together. The years of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge, always facing it together. Do you remember what I said in my first letter to you? Quinn asked. You said many things. Which part? I said I always wanted a full house. A wife and children, noise at the dinner table, toys scattered across the floor. Zelda smiled, that same warm smile that had captured his heart so many years ago. And did you get your full house, Quinn Jennings? He pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her, lavender and home. I got more than I ever dreamed possible. I got you, I got our children. I got a family and a legacy and a love that has sustained me through everything. I got my full house and a full heart and a full life. So did I, Zelda whispered. I came to you broken and desperate, a widow with 3 frightened boys and nothing to offer but hard work and loyalty. And you gave me a home, a partner, a love deeper than the one I lost. You took my broken pieces and helped me put them back together into something beautiful. They kissed there on the porch, just as they had done countless times before, and the love between them was as real and powerful as it had ever been. Age had not diminished it. Time had not worn it down. If anything, it had grown stronger, deepened by years of shared experience and mutual support. That evening, the family gathered once again for the anniversary celebration. The house was filled with people, dozens of them, all connected to Quinn and Zelda by blood or love. There were the original 3 boys, now men in their 40s and 30s with families of their own. There were the younger children, Jacob now 27, Grace 25, and Matthew 21, also married with children beginning families. There were grandchildren and great-grandchildren, ranch hands and their families, friends from town who had known them for decades. As Quinn stood to give a toast, the room fell silent. He looked around at all these people, this legacy he and Zelda had created, and felt his heart swell with gratitude and love. 33 years ago, he began, his voice still strong. I was a lonely man with a big empty house and a dream of filling it with family. I placed an advertisement, not really believing anything would come of it. And then I received a letter from a woman in Pennsylvania, a widow with 3 sons, who was honest enough to tell me the truth about her circumstances and brave enough to take a chance on a stranger. He looked at Zelda, who was standing beside him, and took her hand. That woman changed my life. She brought those 3 boys, who became my sons as surely as if I had fathered them. She brought laughter and chaos and love into my empty house. And then she gave me more children, more joy, more reasons to be grateful every single day. His voice grew thick with emotion. I thought I was offering her security and a home, but she gave me so much more. She gave me purpose and love and a family beyond my wildest dreams. She taught me what it means to be a husband and a father. She made me a better man than I ever would have been without her. He turned to face Zelda fully, looking into her eyes. Zelda Jennings, you are the love of my life, my partner in all things, my best friend and greatest blessing. These 33 years with you have been the best years of my life, and I thank God every day that you answered that advertisement. Zelda was crying openly now, and so were many others in the room. She stood on her toes to kiss him, and the room erupted in cheers and applause. And I thank God every day that you wanted a full house, Zelda said, her voice breaking with emotion. Because you took my broken family and made us whole. You loved us when we needed it most. You became the father my boys needed, the husband I never thought I would have again, the grandfather our grandchildren adore. You filled my life with love and joy and purpose, and I will be grateful for that until my dying day. The party continued late into the night, filled with laughter and music, and the kind of joy that comes from family gathered together. Quinn and Zelda danced together, moving slowly to a waltz played on the piano by their granddaughter Grace, named for the baby who had grown into a teacher and mother herself. "Are you happy?" Quinn murmured as they swayed together. "Happier than I have any right to be," Zelda answered. "You." "I have everything I ever wanted and more. I could not ask for a better life. Neither could I." They danced on, surrounded by the family they had created, the legacy they had built, the love that had sustained them through 3 decades. And as the night wore on and the stars came out above the Colorado mountains, Quinn and Zelda Jennings knew that they had achieved something rare and beautiful, a love that had started from practical necessity and grown into something transcendent, a family built by choice that was as strong as any built by blood, a full house that was bursting with joy. Years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that time brings. Quinn and Zelda grew older, their steps slower, their bodies weaker, but their love never faltering. They faced losses too, friends who passed away, a grandchild lost in an accident, the normal sorrows of a long life. But through it all, they had each other, and they had their family. And that was enough. On a warm evening in early autumn of 1925, 42 years after that first letter had arrived, Quinn and Zelda sat together on their porch swing, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Quinn was 74 now, still sharp of mind but frail of body. Zelda was 66, her hair completely white but her hazel eyes still bright. "You remember that first night?" Quinn asked, as he often did in these reflective years. "When you and the boys arrived and we had dinner together at that table." "I remember everything," Zelda said. "I remember thinking your house was too big, that I would get lost in all these rooms. I remember how kind you were to the boys, how patient. I remember going to bed that night and thinking maybe, just maybe, we would be all right. We were more than all right. We were extraordinary." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We took a mail-order bride arrangement and turned it into one of the great love stories of our time." "The greatest," Quinn agreed. "Better than Romeo and Juliet, better than any story in any book, because it was real and it lasted and it created all of this." He gestured to the ranch, to the house, to the land where their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren were scattered. "I love you, Quinn Jennings," Zelda said softly. "I have loved you for 42 years, and I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. I love you too, Zelda. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They sat together as the sun set and the stars came out, holding hands and remembering and loving each other. And when they finally went inside to bed, moving slowly but still together, they knew that whatever time they had left, they would spend it as they had spent the last 4 decades, side by side in love, grateful for every moment. Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1928 at the age of 77. He died as he had lived his final decades, with Zelda beside him, holding his hand. His last words were, "Thank you for giving me my full house, my love." The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Colorado. The church in Breckenridge overflowed with people whose lives Quinn had touched, family and friends and business associates, and ranch hands, past and present. His 3 oldest sons, Thomas, Benjamin, and Samuel, now in their 50s, stood together to eulogize the man who had chosen to be their father and had never failed them. "He did not have to love us," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "We were another man's children, baggage that came with the woman he wanted to marry. But he chose to love us anyway, completely and without reservation. He chose to be our father, and he was the best father any boy could ask for. Everything I am, everything we all are, we owe to him." Zelda, now 69 and diminished by grief, sat in the front pew surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She had known this day would come, had prepared for it as much as one can prepare for losing one's great love, but the pain was still overwhelming. Quinn had been her partner for 45 years, her lover and friend and support through everything. Without him, the world felt emptier, colder, less bright. But she was not alone. She had the family they had built together, the legacy of love that would continue long after both of them were gone. And she had the memories, thousands upon thousands of moments of joy and love and partnership that no one could take away. Zelda lived for 7 more years after Quinn's death, years spent surrounded by family and sustained by memories. She watched her grandchildren marry and her great-grandchildren born. She continued to tell the story of the cowboy who wanted a full house and the widow who was brave enough to give him one. And she waited, without impatience or fear, for the day when she would see Quinn again. That day came on a crisp November morning in 1935, when Zelda Gardner Jennings passed away peacefully at the age of 76, surrounded by the children and grandchildren who had been her life's work and her greatest joy. Her last words, whispered to Thomas who sat holding her hand, were, "Tell your father I am coming home." She was buried beside Quinn on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under the Colorado sky they had both loved. Their graves were marked with a simple stone that read, "Quinn Jennings, 1851–1928, Zelda Gardner Jennings, 1859–1935. Partners in life and in love together, they built a family and a legacy that will endure for generations." The ranch continued under the management of their descendants, passed down through the generations just as Quinn had hoped. The story of how it all began, with an advertisement and an honest letter, with a lonely cowboy and a brave widow, with 3 frightened boys and a man who chose to love them, became family legend. And everyone who heard it was reminded that the greatest love stories are not always the ones that start with passion and romance, but the ones that start with choice and grow through shared experience into something deep and lasting and true. Quinn and Zelda's story, the story of a mail-order bride who was a widow with 3 sons, and the cowboy who said he always wanted a full house, lived on in the hearts and memories of everyone they had touched. It was a story of courage and kindness, of second chances and chosen family, of a love that had started from practical necessity and grown into something transcendent. It was a story that proved love can be found in unexpected places, that families can be built through choice as much as blood, and that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on a stranger who turns out to be exactly what you needed all along. And so the story ended as all good stories should, not with a period but with an ellipsis, because the legacy Quinn and Zelda had built continued on through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, through the ranch that still stood in the Colorado mountains, through the lessons they had taught about love and family and kindness. They had lived fully, loved completely, and left the world better than they found it. Their full house had become a full life, and that life had created more full lives, rippling out like circles in water, touching more people than they could have ever imagined. The lonely cowboy and the desperate widow had found each other across the distance, had taken a chance on love, and had built something beautiful and lasting that would endure long after they were gone. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of happy ending they both deserved, a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of choice and commitment and the simple human need to love and be loved. They had answered each other's deepest needs and filled each other's empty spaces, and in doing so, they had created a legacy that would never be forgotten. The ranch still stands today, a testament to their love and work, still owned and operated by Jennings descendants who remember the story of Quinn and Zelda and tell it to their own children, keeping the memory alive of the cowboy who wanted a full house and got more than he ever dreamed, and the widow who took a chance on a stranger and found the greatest love of her life.